Representative, good to see you again here. You said this request from the governor is an immigration stunt. Why?
Well, anytime we're talking about health care and Greg Abbott, we have to recognize that Greg Abbott has an abysmal failure as governor on health care. Under Greg Abbott, he's been governor for nearly 10 years. Texas has the highest rate of uninsured in the nation, the highest number of uninsured in the nation, and shamefully, the highest percentage of uninsured children in the nation. So he framed this as a discussion about health care costs. The way to lower health care costs in Texas is to reduce the number of uninsured. He has the power to do that. He's had the power to do that for 10 years, but he has consistently blocked our efforts, Democrats' efforts, to expand health care coverage, which would lower costs for everyone. And that's why I think what he said is so hypocritical.
What's behind this? Is it pure politics or something else at play here?
It's pure politics. I think there's a couple things happening. I think what you've seen President Biden do on the border this year has been successful. He had to do it through executive order because Republicans in Congress, like Ted Cruz, blocked a bipartisan border bill. But it's working, and border crossings are way down. And Greg Abbott knows that. He needs this issue to keep his base fired up, to keep his fundraising going. So he manufactures a new angle on it in order to fire up his base. I think that's all this is.
So the governor wants an annual report to go to him and to the Speaker of the House. What is the House of Representatives going to do with this information?
I have no idea. What it sounds like to me is a gigantic unfunded mandate on hospitals around the state. They don't have the mechanism to do this. I mean, hospitals, when you go into a hospital, they ask you what's wrong with you and what do we need to do to get you healthy again. They don't ask your immigration status. They don't ask you where you're from. That's not their job. And so you're putting a new unfunded mandate on hospitals that the Health and Human Services Commission of Texas is responsible for administering. They don't have the capacity to do that. They're not keeping up with their current responsibilities very well. And so it's just a completely unworkable plan. It's a political stunt.
What does this cost? Any idea?
I have no idea, but it's going to be expensive. Anytime you put that kind of complex unfunded mandate on a state agency and then on hundreds of hospitals around the state, it's going to be very costly. Again, driving up costs in the healthcare system.
And you and I pay for it at the end.
Absolutely, we do. Just like we do today. We subsidize uninsured Texans, of which there are 5 million, through our healthcare premiums and through our property taxes. And this is going to add to that total.
Every time we make a phone call about anybody in a newsroom, it's always HIPAA regulations stop this. Can the governor's order get beyond HIPAA regulations to get this data from hospitals?
That's a great question. HIPAA has to do with medical records. Ostensibly, this is essentially about your status in the United States.
But isn't that protected under privacy? I mean,
I would think that a lot of that would fall under privacy, because if you can link a specific patient's records and the cost of their health care received to their immigration status, that would potentially be a HIPAA violation. So I think that's one of the many unanswered questions.
What kind of reaction have you had to your position on this? Because you created a thread online that I read that got a lot of feedback. What have people been saying about this?
Yeah, it did get a lot of feedback. Well, it was mostly positive, and I think most people agree that the fact that Texas has the highest number of uninsured, the highest rate of uninsured in the country, is shameful, and Greg Abbott could do something about that. But instead, he distracts with these types of issues. So I think it tapped into the frustration and outrage that a lot of Texans have about how he has failed and the legislature has failed on this issue. And I think that's what my Twitter thread spoke to.
And at the end of the day, any idea what this is going to cost Texans and cost hospitals?
I don't, but I think it will be expensive. And I think the hospitals, my understanding is they're still grappling with his executive order and trying to figure out how they could potentially even implement it. So there's a lot of unanswered questions.
Does this go to court?
I think it will. I think if this is something that he persists with and really tries to get hospitals to do this, I'm sure someone would take this to court eventually.
Let me ask you about the November election. Kamala Harris has created a lot of energy among Democrats, a lot of momentum for her campaign. How is she going to help Texas Democrats running down ballot below her? Do you think she will? Because some Democrats want the momentum and want the energy, but don't want to really be associated with her.
I think she absolutely helps us. There's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm about Vice President Harris's candidacy for the presidency. And I think that we're seeing a lot of young people fired up and engaged who maybe for whatever reason weren't as engaged in the presidential election a couple months ago. And I think that is going to really boost turnout. And I think it's going to help Democrats up and down the ballot. So it's very exciting to see.
At the end of the day, you think she will boost turnout in this state?
I do.
Democrats heading into Chicago for the Democratic National Convention coming up here next week. What are you expecting to see?
Well, I think you'll see a great show of unity around Vice President Harris and Governor Walz. And I think you'll see a tribute and genuine appreciation for the service of President Biden for the last 4 years, but also for his 50 years of service to this country. And most importantly, I think you'll see Democratic leaders in our country talk to the needs and the real concerns of everyday Americans, and that's economic issues, that's education, it's maintaining America's strength in the world on the global stage, and I think you'll see Democrats speak to all of that.
What's going to decide this election at the end of the day?
Well, I think that what will decide it in the end is which candidate, which party is going to be able to deliver for the American people. And I think ultimately the American people are going to look at the two candidates and say that Vice President Harris is serious about restoring reproductive freedom, continuing to build on the economic progress we've made under President Biden, and giving all Americans an opportunity to get ahead. Contrast that with Donald Trump, who continues to divide Americans, who doesn't have an economic plan except for giving more tax cuts to the richest Americans, and continuing to embarrass us and set us back on the global stage. I don't think America wants to go back to that, so I think that's what's going to decide the election.
One more question about the DNC.
Yeah.
I haven't seen Democrats this engaged, this energized nationally since Barack Obama 2008. How would you describe the energy? Is that accurate? You're a lot closer to Democratic politics than I am, but is that what you're hearing?
I think that's a good comparison. As I've talked to Democrats in my district and around the state over the phone over the last few weeks, I think that is a very good analogy. I think people are excited because it's new, it's fresh, and we see Americans from all walks of life, but particularly young people, enthused and excited to be involved in the political process. And that's something that we had in 2008 for sure. And I think we're seeing it again this year in 2024.
Representative, thank you for the time.
Thank you, Jason.